Bruce Wayne, Batman Beyond. How can Bruce Wayne betray himself? Well, unless we're speaking in a philosophical or psychological way, he can't. That's why this point is talking about Batman Beyond, which is Terry McGinnis. In Batman Beyond issues 31, 32, and 33, after visiting Arkham Asylum, Bruce Wayne begins to act rather strangely. He begins drinking at odd times, he doesn't seem to care when Terry is on the verge of death, with Terry's brother having to step in to save him, and he seems to go gambling and brags about his money a lot too, which is kinda strange. Most shocking of all though, he shoots at Terry when he's confronted and tackles him off a ledge. It turns out, it isn't actually Bruce Wayne. It's actually a doppelganger villain named Falseface, so it's all good. And I'm sure none of you are surprised. Jezebel Jet. In the Batman R.I.P. comic, the group known as the Black Glove started working in Gotham, and Bruce Wayne immediately smelt foul play. At a point during this conflict, his love interest at the time, Jezebel Jet, was revealed to be a double agent. Jezebel and the Black Glove even buried Batman alive. But Batman is one guy whose heart you don't want to mess with. He rises from the grave, revealing he was merely pretending to be in love with her too. Then he reveals her whole backstory, which he seemed to already know. She then left, vowing to get revenge on Bats, which seems a little backwards to me, before being killed by Talia al Ghul. The Crimson Knight. Richard Lyons was a character that appeared in Detective Comics number 271. He was also known by the name Crimson Knight, and was a vigilante in Gotham, gaining the trust of the GCPD as well as the heroic duo of Batman and Robin. Being the good guys though, they had a sneaking suspicion he may not have been on the up and up, and after confronting him after he tried to steal some valuables, it was revealed that he was actually Crime Lord Lyons. And he was promptly captured, and his career as both a hero and a villain were both ended. The Cavalier. The Cavalier was a swashbuckling, sword-wielding hero who first appeared in Legends of the Dark Knight number 32. Batman was a big fan of the Cavalier actually. He had such a positive outlook when fighting crime, and he was a man of gallantry and honor, and he reminded Bruce Wayne of his childhood, being very similar to Zorro, who Bruce Wayne was a fan of. Sadly, the Cavalier let Batman down when he started resorting to a life of crime when he realized just how much easier it was compared to fighting crime. So he's not so honorable after all, it seems. The Justice League. There are actually multiple storylines involved here. Basically, in the Tower of Babel story, it's revealed that Batman has contingencies for every member of the Justice League in case anything were to go sour. When Ra's al Ghul gets his hands on these plans though, he uses them against the Justice League. Now, Batman is able to defeat Ra's, but it causes the entire Justice League to lose a bit of trust in Batman. I just want to pause to say, this is kind of dumb. He's Batman. You think he wouldn't have a plan for scenarios like that? But hey, conflict sells. Either way, after the Joker ends up hitting the core members of the Justice League with Joker Toxin in the Endgame storyline, they all turn on Batman, leading to a completely awesome moment where he takes them all on and comes out on top. Yeah, they were not in their right minds, but their actions were slightly fueled by the distrust caused by the event of the Tower of Babel. Catwoman, Dark Knight Rises. Now, if you haven't seen Dark Knight Rises yet, well then you clearly wouldn't care if I spoil a tiny little plot point. Batman makes a deal with Selina Kyle to give her a program called the Clean Slate that will eliminate her criminal past in exchange for her leading him to Bane. To be fair, she does lead Batman to the villain, only it's a trap and Bane beats the ever-living heck out of Bruce, breaking his back. She did it to save her own skin, but I just feel like if she put a little bit more faith in Bruce, maybe the movie would have ended way earlier. But I like how the rest of the story goes, so a betrayal that ultimately wasn't so bad, right? Hey guys, before we carry on, I just want to quickly shout out the top 10 nerd presence on Facebook. Check us out there, and also, if you are enjoying the video, smack that like and subscribe button, it really helps us out. Thanks for all the support guys, it means a lot. Flashpoint Batman. When the Flashpoint universe was created, it changed a lot of characters. Possibly one of the most interesting ones though, was Batman, who in this universe is actually Thomas Wayne, with Bruce being killed instead, and Martha Wayne becoming the Joker. It's twisted and cool, and this Batman has a different moral code. Killing criminals. When he finds out that mainline Bruce Wayne becomes the Batman, he deems this unacceptable and tries to change his son's ways. Instead of being, I don't know, a good father though, he teams up with Bane to break Bruce. Things get out of hand in the city of Bane event, which actually ended up with Thomas killing Alfred Pennyworth, which broke everyone. He very clearly regretted his actions, but I don't know, man, you ain't coming back from that one. Not for me, sorry, you're done. Superman Dark Knights of Steel. I heavily regret not talking about this when we covered the top 10 new DC universes. Dark Knights of Steel takes place in a medieval fantasy version of the DC universe. It's super cool. The Wayne family used to rule over the land until Jor-El lands on Earth after escaping Krypton, and they easily take over. Bruce and Kal-El are actually unknowing brothers, with Bruce being Jor-El's half-son. After a whole bunch of stuff happens that I won't tell you because you should read it, Bruce reveals the truth of his parentage to Kal, who stabs him in the chest with a shard of kryptonite. He then flies him up into the sky and throws him into the ground. Now, we don't know yet how the story is going to go from here on, or I don't know, but it definitely surprised me and I wanted you to all know so we can all follow along together. Ghostmaker. The Ghostmaker and Batman actually go back a long time, having met when they were both training to become vigilantes. They were easily friends. But the difference between the two lay deeply in their core values and motivations. The motivation of Bruce's parents' death didn't sit well with Ghostmaker, and actually caused them to fall out. The Ghostmaker saw crime fighting as an art rather than a duty, and he lacked a sense of empathy that brought Bruce to classify him as a psychopath. They fought multiple different times and ultimately agreed that the Ghostmaker will stay far out of Gotham. That is, until Joker War, when he invaded Gotham, incapacitating Batman and the Bat family plus some other heroes, and he tries to save Gotham. Yeah, that makes sense. DC versus vampires. Alright, this one is hot off the presses. This year we got the DC versus vampires storyline that I didn't even know about it until making this video. Basically, the vampires are building themselves up to take on the world, turning many superheroes and supervillains into vampires. There's a mystery, however, surrounding who exactly the hero leader of the vampires could be. After testing all the members of the Bat family, it's determined that none of them are vampires, so at least he has that. After some intense detective work and a whole lot of other stuff that I don't want to spoil, the leader of the vampire army is finally revealed. Spoiler warning, okay? If you want to read this, turn off the video now. Okay? It's frickin' Nightwing! Revealed as he plunges his fist straight through an unaware Batman's chest nonetheless. What? He had been consuming the blood of Starfire, which has the unique ability to make vampires immune to their natural weaknesses. I'm gonna be staying tuned on how the story progresses, but Vampire Nightwing? Oh yes. Oh yes.
At number 10 we have Baphomet. Although he was actually just onomatopoeia in disguise, it was still a moment of betrayal that took Batman by surprise. Baphomet appeared to be a young, up-and-coming vigilante superhero who appeared numerous times to help Batman, one time helping him defeat the Black Spider. He showed face so many times in fact that Batman started to trust him and eventually gave him his blessing to start fighting crime in Gotham. Batman even had Baphomet fill in for him while he was on vacation in Aspen with his fiancée. And Onomatopoeia as Baphomet was really playing the long game. He even caught Mr. Freeze and single-handedly stopped the Joker. So Batman really started to confide in him, even bringing him to the Batcave one day after a real heart-to-heart moment. In this instance, Batman even goes as far as taking off his own mask in front of Baphomet, who promptly reveals his true identity as Onomatopoeia and slits Silver St. Cloud's throat, who is Batman's fiancée. Of course, at this point, Batman knows that he messed up big time, but how could he have known? This dude played the long game, with a sad outcome for Batman, of course. At number 9 we have Zatanna. This is another pretty sad one, but then again, that's sort of the theme of this whole list, right? Zatanna, a powerful superhero who has control over magic, is a longtime love interest for Batman. And in one storyline known as the Mind Wipe storyline, Zatanna is caught wiping Dr. Light's memory, and also trying to change his personality to be less evil. But when Batman walks in on this happening, she also wipes part of his mind as well. Of course, Batman doesn't realize this since His memory had just been wiped, but the Justice League has to come together and confess to Batman what had happened. This crushes Bruce, causing him to naturally develop some pretty serious trust issues and create Brother Eye, an intelligent system that orbits Earth to keep an eye on superheroes that may betray him in the future, which leads to more sad discoveries down the road for the Dark Knight. Okay, at number 8 we have Catwoman. I know, she definitely isn't considered a villain to Batman either. In most cases, as we all know, Batman is usually romantically associated with Catwoman. And going into the Nolanverse, there's an instance in The Dark Knight Rises when Batman's trust for Catwoman is strong enough that she actually leads him into a trap set by Bane, in one of the closest calls we see Batman ever face, comics or movies, to facing death. This just proves that Catwoman really can't be trusted no matter how influential or appealing she is to Batman. She will always put herself first, and that's something we can basically confirm after seeing this. Luckily, at the end of this event, when Catwoman sees how hard Bane beats up Batman, she gains sympathy, leading to a change of heart. But it was sort of too late at that point. At number 7 we've got Alfred. Not a superhero in the state we all know him as, but why he belongs on this list is that in one storyline, he's actually given superpowers. And if his intentions had remained heroic, Alfred would have been a superhero by nature. But on Earth 1, while Batman is away, Alfred decides to track down a criminal organization that Batman had been monitoring. But he's captured, and when Batman and Robin come to save him, he sacrifices himself by walking into a trap set by the bad guys before they could. On the brink of death, Alfred is revived by a physicist named Brandon Crawford, who uses a radiation treatment to revive him. Unfortunately, this instead turns him into the Outsider, giving him superpowers and leading him into an angry rage towards Batman. Thanks a lot, Brandon. You had one job. Anyway, when the Outsider targets Batman's allies, Man-Bat, Batgirl, and Robin, they get the best of him, tearing the evil Outsider out of Alfred's body and leaving him vulnerable. And Alfred, in all his heroic glory, lays the last blow, taking out the Outsider for good. It's nice to have you back, Alfred, but maybe just stay put in the Batcave from now on. Number 6, we have Stephanie Brown. When Stephanie is Batman's Robin, she betrays him as well. Sort of. It was an accident, but a betrayal nonetheless. When Batman seemingly dismisses her abilities to be an adequate Robin, she sort of pushes him to train her, which he finally does. But when she disobeys him twice in combat, Batman is forced to retire her because he feels he just can't trust her. Feeling isolated, she goes off on her own to try and prove her worth. She gets a hold of one of his long-term plans to deal with the criminal underworld of Gotham, but due to her missing one key detail which the plan was predicated on, it all spins out of control and causes a citywide gang war, resulting in the Batman War Games storyline. She is then captured by Black Mask and tortured for information about Batman. She escapes, but later succumbs to her injuries in the hospital with Batman by her bedside. A very sad end to a potential superhero who just wanted to be accepted, but instead betrayed the very man she was trying to impress. At number 5, there's Jason Todd. Jason, who used to work alongside Batman as Robin, turns on him and teams up with the Riddler and Hush, another character who betrays Batman. We'll talk about that later. What happens is that Batman thinks Jason was killed by the Joker, and after a while of accepting this as fact, Batman is completely caught off guard by the return of his old partner, but this time with ill intentions for Bruce Wayne. So it turns out he actually is killed by the Joker, but after Superman Prime alters reality, Jason is revived. Sort of. He falls into a coma for a year and is taken by Talia al Ghul to a Lazarus pit to restore his powers. But when he reemerges, he isn't himself and is influenced by Talia to confront Batman, wondering how the Joker hadn't been killed to avenge his death. When Batman doesn't show remorse that he spared the Joker's life, Jason is enraged and takes on the mantle of Red Hood. He then does some nasty stuff like leading multiple criminal gangs in Gotham, sharing Batman's identity with Hush and the Riddler, and other villainous things which would be detrimental to Batman's ability to keep the streets of Gotham adequately protected. At number 4, we have AZRAEL, or John Paul Valley, in the Batman Nightfall story arc. A staunch supporter of Bruce Wayne, John Paul Valley is placed in charge of the Batman alias as Bruce Wayne is facing burnout due to run-ins with Bane. But while AZRAEL is wearing the mask and cape, he actually starts to inflict too much violence on the criminals of Gotham, going against the reputation that Bruce had taken so long to develop. AZRAEL even goes as far as distancing himself from Robin Robin, believing that Robin isn't enforcing enough violence on the criminals of Gotham, seeing this as the only way to restore peace. Commissioner Gordon's trust towards Batman also takes a hit from John Paul's instability, because of course, no one is informed that this new Batman isn't in fact Bruce Wayne. It's another devastating betrayal of Bruce Wayne's trust, because when Bruce needed him most, a close confidant not only betrays his wishes and his reputation, but also gets carried away with his influence over Gotham, at one point leaving a captured civilian to die, along with serial killer Abattoir, who had been the captor. Just a flat out betrayal all across the board. Okay, at number 3 we have Thomas Elliot, otherwise known as Hush. Thomas was a childhood friend of Bruce Wayne who had the ability to become a superhero, but instead went supervillain, taking a stance against Batman in everything he does. What happens is that Thomas Elliot turns bad and decides to try and kill his parents for their fortunes. But Thomas Wayne, Bruce's father, actually keeps his mother alive due to his advanced surgical skills, which angers Thomas, who turns on Bruce in a bitter turn to resentment. He starts referring to himself as Hush, a masked villain covered in bandages, set out to defeat Batman. And he gets pretty close too, teaming up with the Riddler, the Joker, Poison Ivy, and Killer Croc in an elaborate plan to take down Bruce Wayne altogether. So yes, I know what you're thinking. He's not really a superhero, but deserves a spot high on this list because he could have been. This guy had dealt with a tougher upbringing than Bruce, his dad being an abusive alcoholic and his mother never protecting him adequately, so he had a harder time following the path of good that Bruce had led. But when they would play together as kids, Thomas would often outmaneuver Bruce, proving that had he pushed through his trauma and gone down a path of good like Bruce, he could have been a superhero that might have even contended with Batman's abilities. And I just had to put him on the list of times Batman was betrayed, because what hurts more than a longtime friend betraying you know what I mean? Actually, I hope you don't know what I mean. Let's keep it at that. At number 2, we take a look at the Injustice storyline when Superman betrays his otherwise longtime friend Bruce Wayne, along with some other superheroes as well. In a storyline explored both in the comics and in the video games, Superman is tricked into killing a pregnant Lois Lane under the influence of drugs that the Joker gives him. As a result, Superman goes against his core values and kills the Joker. This throws him into a spiral, as he also turns on other members of the Justice League who he once called teammates, including Batman. When Batman notices that Superman's reign of terror has turned into an authoritarian regime, he sets out to stop him. So what does the once heroic Superman do? He reveals Batman's true identity to the world and recruits Bruce's own son Damian to fight against him and the Justice League alongside him. Ouch. This brings us to number 1, Damian Wayne, Bruce Wayne's own son. This is a sad and a brutal betrayal, which is why it belongs at number 1 for me. Having been brought up by his mother Talia al Ghul and trained as an assassin from a young age, Damian is an aggressive and unagreeable young man who doesn't like to follow rules, especially those set by his father, who he feels is too easy on the criminals and isn't allowing him to thrive as the trained assassin that he is. Sound familiar? So when the opportunity arises, Damian Wayne joins up with Superman, who, as we've just previously explored, had just adopted all those values that Damian desired. So in a selfish and naive move to serve his own needs to kill, Damian Wayne, the former Robin, betrays his own father and helps to take on the entire Justice League as a force of evil. Just like many supervillains, his motivations are pretty deep-seated, and it's pretty obvious that he'd always wanted to serve alongside his father, but this just proves that just like Hush, a powerful being's upbringing can make a huge impact on the brutal path they choose. I'm sure if Bruce Wayne had known that he had a son in the first place, and it hadn't been sprung on him by Talia so late into Damian's adolescence, the boy could have been saved from these dark ways, which led to his betrayal. Brutal.